I want to tell you about the night I sat alone at a table set for 9 people, watching a pot roast go cold in the oven, and realized that my family hadn't forgotten me. They'd left me behind on purpose. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning. Because this story doesn't start with a birthday party. It starts about 4 years earlier, with a feeling I kept dismissing as jealousy. My name is Carol. I'm 66 years old now, though I was 65 when all of this happened. I live in a yellow house in Raleigh, North Carolina, the same house where I raised my son Marcus for 20 years after his father walked out. It's a good house. Solid. The kind of place where the kitchen always smelled like something baking and the front porch light stayed on until everyone was home safe. Marcus is 39. He married a woman named Simone about 7 years ago. They have 2 kids, a boy named Jackson, who just turned 8, and a girl named Lily, who's 6. From the outside, they looked like the perfect little family. And for a long time, I believed that's exactly what they were. Simone was magnetic from the moment Marcus brought her home. Beautiful in that effortless way that makes other women feel like they're trying too hard. She laughed at all the right moments. Remembered everyone's preferences. Marcus took his coffee black. My sister Diane liked her tea with lemon. And she had this way of making you feel like you were the most important person in the room when she was talking to you. I loved her. Genuinely. In the beginning, I was relieved. Honestly. After Marcus's difficult 20s, the years of wrong relationships and bad timing, I just wanted him to be happy. And Simone made him happy. That much was real, at least at first. But here's the thing. There's a version of being loved that feels warm and genuine. And then there's a version that's performance. And looking back now, I can see the exact moment the performance started. I just didn't recognize it for what it was. It was Thanksgiving, 2 years into their marriage. Jackson was about 2 years old, still in that wobbly toddler stage where everything he did was pure comedy. I'd driven down from Raleigh to their house in Cary with 2 pies and a green bean casserole. I was so excited to see them. I'd been counting down the days. When I arrived, Simone met me at the door with that big smile and a hug that lasted a beat too long. The kind of hug that's more theatrical than warm. She took my dishes and then said, almost casually, "Oh Carol, I hope you don't mind. I moved dinner up to 4 instead of 5. Marcus has been so tired lately and I wanted to make sure we didn't push too late with Jackson's bedtime." It was 4:07 when she said this. I must have missed the message, I said, because I genuinely thought I had. "Oh, I told Marcus to let you know," she said, already walking back into the kitchen. "I'm sure it just slipped his mind." I missed the first 40 minutes of Thanksgiving that year. The appetizers, the first glasses of wine, whatever conversation had happened before I arrived. And when I mentioned it to Marcus later, gently, just noting that I hadn't gotten the updated time, he said, "Mom, I really thought Simone sent you a text. I'm sorry, it was just a miscommunication." Just a miscommunication. That phrase became the soundtrack of the next several years of my life. I missed Jackson's 4th birthday party because I showed up at the address Simone had texted me, which turned out to be the wrong park. By the time I figured out the right location, cake had already been cut. I missed Lily's first dance recital because Simone told me it was at 2 in the afternoon when it was actually at 10 in the morning. I missed Marcus's promotion celebration at a restaurant downtown because the dinner reservation was changed and Simone forgot, her word, forgot, to update me. Each one individually? Explainable. Accidents happen. Calendars get mixed up. People get busy. But all of them together, stacked up over 4 years like a growing pile of evidence I refused to look at? That was something else entirely. I should tell you about my sister Diane, because she matters in this story. Diane is 62, 4 years younger than me. And we've been close our whole lives in that complicated way that sisters sometimes are. We argue. We go long stretches without talking. We show up for each other when it really counts. Or at least we used to. About 3 years ago, Diane got close with Simone. Started going to yoga with her on Saturday mornings. Started having coffee dates, shopping trips. I told myself I wasn't jealous. I told myself it was good that the women in Marcus's life liked each other. I told myself a lot of things. But I noticed that Diane started mentioning family things I hadn't been told about. Little things at first. Oh, wasn't that fun when they took the kids to the aquarium last month? I hadn't known about the aquarium trip. Simone did such a good job with Jackson's school project, didn't she? I hadn't known Jackson had a school project. When I mentioned it to Diane, she looked genuinely confused. I just assumed you knew, she'd say. And maybe she did assume that. Or maybe she'd been told. In that smooth, casual way Simone operated, that Carol already knew. Carol was updated. Carol was fine. I don't know. And that uncertainty, not being able to tell the difference between a lie and an accident, is one of the most disorienting feelings I've ever experienced. Now, the birthday party. I turned 65 in September. I know 65 feels like a milestone. And maybe that made me want to celebrate it more than I normally would. But I'd been having a rough year. My best friend Margaret had moved to Arizona to be near her own grandchildren. My knees had started giving me trouble, which meant I couldn't take the long walks I'd always loved. I was feeling, to be honest with you, a little bit forgotten. So I decided I was going to throw myself a dinner. Nothing extravagant, just the people I loved most. A good meal, some time together. I started planning 6 weeks out. I called Marcus first. He was enthusiastic. September 14th. Absolutely, Mom. We'll be there. Simone loves any excuse for a nice dinner. I called Diane and her husband Gerald. I called my neighbor Pat, who'd known Marcus since he was in grade school. I even called my cousin Ellen, who I only see a few times a year but who always makes me laugh. I sent a physical invitation. Actual paper, envelopes, stamps. I thought it might be nice to do something old-fashioned, something that felt intentional. Simone texted me the day after receiving it. Carol, this is so sweet. We are absolutely going to be there. I'm already thinking about what to wear. And she included a little heart emoji. I spent the following weeks planning the menu. Roast chicken, not pot roast. I want to get this right because the details matter. Roast chicken with rosemary and lemon. Wild rice. Roasted vegetables, and a chocolate layer cake that I made from scratch using my mother's recipe. I bought new candles. I ironed the good tablecloth. I wrote place cards in my careful, loopy handwriting. Carol, Marcus, Simone, Jackson, Lily, Diane, Gerald, Pat, Ellen. 9 place cards. 9 chairs around a table that had seen 30 years of family dinners. The 14th was a Saturday. I was up at 6 in the morning, moving through my kitchen with the kind of focused, happy energy I hadn't felt in months. The chicken went into the oven at 4. By 5:30 the house smelled incredible. By 6 o'clock, the table was set, the candles were lit, and I was standing in front of my bathroom mirror in a blue dress with a strand of my mother's pearls at my throat, thinking that 65 didn't look half bad. 6 o'clock came and went. I checked my phone. No messages. 6:15. 6:30. I called Marcus. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. Hey sweetheart, just checking in. Did something come up? Dinner's ready whenever you get here. Love you. I called Diane. Voicemail. I called Pat. Voicemail. 6:45. I walked back to the dining room and stood in the doorway looking at those 9 place cards. The candles had been burning for 40 minutes. The wax was starting to run. I told myself there must be traffic. A highway backup. Maybe an accident somewhere on 40. I turned the oven down low and went to sit in the living room. 7 o'clock. I have been lonely in my life. I was lonely when Marcus's father left. I was lonely in the early years after that, working 2 jobs and raising a boy and barely keeping everything together. I know what loneliness feels like. But what I felt sitting in my living room at 7 o'clock on September 14th was a different animal. It had teeth. 7:15. I made the mistake of opening Instagram. Simone had posted 40 minutes earlier. A wide, sunlit photograph of the deck of a cruise ship somewhere in the Caribbean. Judging by the color of the water, Marcus stood next to her with his arm around her waist, squinting into the sun, grinning in that relaxed way he almost never looked anymore. Jackson and Lily were in front of them. making silly faces at the camera. Behind them, just visible at a table near the railing, were Diane and Gerald. The caption read, "Surprise birthday getaway for my amazing husband. Best family ever. Living fully." I read it 3 times. It wasn't Marcus's birthday. His birthday was in March. I don't know why she wrote that. Maybe to make it look spontaneous. Maybe because she liked the way it sounded. Maybe because she'd stopped caring whether the details made sense to anyone who might look closely. I scrolled through more photos. Cocktails at sunset, Jackson in a snorkeling mask, Lily with an ice cream cone, chocolate dripping down her wrist, Diane laughing at something off camera, her hair blowing in the ocean breeze. There was one photo of all of them at a dinner table on the ship. Candles in the center, wine glasses raised, everyone looking at the camera with those full, relaxed, vacation smiles. My table at home still had 9 place cards in front of 9 empty chairs. I put my phone face down on the couch cushion and sat very still for a long time. After a while I got up, went to the kitchen, turned off the oven, and covered the chicken with foil. I blew out the candles in the dining room. I folded the tablecloth. I put the place cards in a kitchen drawer. I don't know why I didn't just throw them away. But I couldn't bring myself to, and I sat down at the kitchen table with a glass of water and my mother's chocolate cake. And I ate a slice of it alone. It was a good cake. My mother's recipe never failed. Marcus called the next morning. Sunday, just after 9. His voice was careful, braced. "Mom, hey, happy belated birthday." "Thank you, Marcus." A pause. "I should have called sooner. I'm sorry about dinner. The trip kind of came together last minute and Simone thought I'd told you and I thought she'd told you and you both thought the other one had told me." "Yeah. And neither of you checked." Another pause. Longer. "Mom, Did Diane know?" I asked. "Did she know it was my birthday dinner you were all missing?" The silence before his answer told me everything. "She thought you'd already rescheduled it," he said finally. "Simone mentioned that you'd decided to push it to October because of your knee." "My knee? My knee is fine, Marcus." Okay, Mom, I'm really sorry. I know this looks terrible." "It looks like what it is," I said. And then, because I wasn't ready to say more than that, because I still didn't have all the pieces, I told him I had to go. And I hung up. Here's what I did in the 10 days that followed. I sat with my anger long enough to let it settle into something quieter and more useful. Then I started paying attention. I thought about every missed event, every miscommunication, every casually delivered piece of wrong information over the past 4 years. I thought about the way Simone hugged me, that theatrical, too long embrace that always felt like something being performed for an audience rather than actually felt. I thought about how Marcus had changed. Gradually, so gradually, from the man who called me twice a week to the man who checked with his wife before agreeing to Sunday dinner with his mother. I thought about the things Simone had said over the years that had lodged in my memory without my fully understanding why. "Carol, you seem exhausted lately. You really should be taking better care of yourself. Marcus worries about you being alone in that big house. We've been talking about whether it might be time to think about other options. The kids adore you, of course. But I do worry about Jackson getting too attached. He cries for a week every time he leaves your house. And it's starting to affect his adjustment at school." Each one, in isolation, sounded like concern. Strung together, they formed a different picture. A picture of a woman methodically repositioning me in my own family's narrative. Not the grandmother, not the matriarch, not the woman who held this family together for 20 years when there was no one else. Just a worry, a burden, a problem to be managed. I was sitting at my kitchen table with a legal pad and a growing list of incidents when my doorbell rang on a Thursday morning. I opened the door to a man I'd never seen before. Mid-40s, dark complexion, strong jaw, the kind of face that would be handsome if it weren't so worn down with stress and sleeplessness. He was dressed neatly, dark jeans, a gray button-down, but he had the look of someone who'd been carrying something heavy for a very long time. "Mrs. Carol Hayward?" he said. "That's me. My name is Terrence Webb." He stopped, like he was steeling himself. "I need to talk to you about your daughter-in-law." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I unlatched the chain and opened the door wider. His story came out slowly, with the halting rhythm of someone who's rehearsed something so many times the words have started to feel unreal. He and Simone, whose real name, he told me, was Sandra Morrow, had been together for almost 3 years. This was before Marcus, before the wedding, before Jackson, before any of it. They'd lived together in Durham. He'd been saving for an engagement ring. He thought they were building a life. She left on a Tuesday while he was at work. Everything of hers was gone when he came home. Clothes, jewelry, even the houseplants she'd brought from her old apartment. No note, no text. His calls went straight to a number that was already disconnected. He spent 8 months looking for her. Filed a missing person report that the police didn't take seriously because there was no evidence of foul play in adults. They reminded him, "We're allowed to leave relationships." Hired an investigator who eventually told him she'd simply started over somewhere else under a different name. She was pregnant when she left. Terrence said. He was looking at his hands. Not at me. About 10 weeks along. I didn't know until afterward, when I finally got her medical records as part of trying to locate her. She'd been seen at a clinic in Durham. The dates matched. I felt the kitchen tilt slightly beneath me. How old would that child be now? He looked up. 8. Jackson turned 8 in April. I found her by accident. Terrence continued. 6 months ago, I was at a conference in Charlotte and I saw her at a restaurant, her and a little boy. And Carol, he stopped. Started again. That little boy looked exactly like my nephew did at that age. Same eyes, same way of moving. I sat in my rental car for an hour trying to talk myself out of what I was thinking. He didn't talk himself out of it. He hired another investigator, a better one this time. He got a DNA sample. He was quiet about the specifics, and had it tested. He reached into the interior pocket of his jacket and placed a folded document on my kitchen table. I didn't reach for it right away. I looked at it like it might be something dangerous. Which, in a way, it was. 99.4%. Terrence said quietly. Jackson is my biological son. I thought about Jackson, 8 years old, missing his 2 front teeth, obsessed with anything involving space. He had deep-set dark eyes and a wide smile and a way of tilting his head to one side when he was listening hard to something. I'd always thought he looked like Marcus's father, who I'd known briefly before the divorce. I'd told myself that was where the resemblance came from. I'd been wrong. Have you confronted her? I asked. No, I came to you first. He folded his hands on the table. Because when I started researching her, Sandra's real history, I found out about the pattern. And I found out about you. About what she's been doing to you. What do you mean, pattern? Terrence slid a second document across the table. A summary prepared by his investigator. Sandra Morrow, born in Greensboro, North Carolina, 1986. No college degree despite telling Marcus she had one. 2 previous relationships that ended suddenly. 1 man in Charlotte. 1 in Fayetteville. Both of whom she'd been living with. Both of whom described her departure as abrupt and complete. Both of whom mentioned afterward that they'd felt, during the relationships, increasingly cut off from friends and family. One of them suspected she'd been pregnant when she left. She picks men who have something she needs. Terrence said. Security, stability, a family structure. And then she builds a wall around them. Makes sure anyone who might ask hard questions, mothers, sisters, old friends, gets pushed to the outside. Labeled as difficult, or jealous, or not supportive of the relationship. I thought about every time Simone had described me to Marcus as stressed, or not doing well, or a little confused lately. And when she's ready to move on, Terrence continued, the man has nothing left. No support system. No one who knows his history. No one who remembers who he was before her. He's alone, and she's already building the next version of her life. She was going to leave Marcus. I said. It wasn't quite a question. I think she was getting ready to. The investigator found some things. Financial transfers. A storage unit in Garner with valuables she'd been quietly moving. A separate email account. He paused. Mrs. Hayward, I think she was probably 6 to 9 months from being gone. And Marcus would have been left with nothing. No wife, no savings, no friends he'd kept close, no mother he still had a real relationship with. Just Lily, who was biologically his, and the wreckage of a life that had been carefully engineered to collapse. "What do you want from me?" I asked. Terence looked me steadily in the eye. "I want my son to know his father. I don't want to destroy the only family Jackson has ever known. And I think," he hesitated, "I think you're the only person in that household who Simone hasn't fully neutralized yet. She's tried, but you're still here, you're still paying attention." I sat with that for a moment. "You came to the right person," I said. We spent 2 hours at my kitchen table that Thursday. Planning. I took notes on my legal pad. Terence had brought copies of everything: the DNA results, the investigator's report, the financial records, the documentation of Sandra Morrow's real history. We organized it into a folder. We talked through timing, through how to present things, through what outcome we were actually hoping for. Terence was careful throughout to say, in different ways, that he wanted what was best for Jackson, not what was satisfying for him. "I missed 8 years," he said at one point. "I can't get those back, but I can make sure he doesn't miss the next 8. I believed him, and I thought, sitting across from this exhausted, careful man, that Marcus was lucky to have someone like this fighting for his son. Even if Marcus didn't know it yet. Marcus and Simone came back from the cruise on a Friday evening. I gave them the weekend to settle in, to let the children readjust to home and school routines. I wanted everyone calm. Monday morning, I called Marcus at work. "I'd like to come for dinner Wednesday night," I said. "Just family. Something I want to discuss with all of us together." "Is everything okay, Mom?" "Everything is fine. I'll bring dessert." There was the usual pause. The background negotiation I'd learned to expect. "Let me just check with Simone about Wednesday," he said. "Of course," I said pleasantly. He called back an hour later. Wednesday was fine. 6 o'clock. Simone was making pasta. I drove to their house in Cary on Wednesday evening with the manila folder on the passenger seat and a lemon pound cake in the backseat. I'd worn a nice blouse, deep green. One Marcus always said looked good on me, and I'd taken extra care with my appearance. Not out of vanity but because I wanted to feel like myself walking into that house. Grounded, steady. The children were excited to see me in the uncomplicated way children are before adults teach them to manage their enthusiasm. Jackson wrapped his arms around my waist and Lily held up a drawing she'd made at school for me to admire. I crouched down and gave it proper attention. 2 figures labeled, Grandma, and Lily, in a field of lopsided flowers, and I felt the familiar pang of loving these children so fiercely and knowing how fragile that love's presence in their lives had become. "Go wash up for dinner," Simone said to them, appearing from the kitchen in an apron. Her smile perfectly warm. "Grandma Carol's going to sit and relax for a minute." The smile stayed in place all through dinner. I watched it the way you watch something you finally understood. It was a beautiful performance. Simone served the pasta, asked Marcus about his day, drew Jackson out on the subject of his science project, cut Lily's food into manageable pieces. She refilled wine glasses and laughed at the right moments and made the whole table feel effortlessly cared for. But I could see the edges now. The way her eyes moved to me when I spoke directly to the children. The way she positioned herself physically between me and Marcus when we stood near each other. The slight flicker when I mentioned something from Marcus's childhood, a story she wasn't part of, and the quick, smooth way she redirected the conversation. After dinner the children went to the playroom, and the 3 of us sat at the cleared table with coffee and my lemon cake. "You said you had something to discuss," Simone said, still smiling. "That sounds official." "It is. A little." I reached into my bag and brought out the manila folder. I set it on the table between us. "I've been doing some thinking since my birthday. About family. About honesty. About how well we actually know the people we love." Marcus looked at the folder. "Mom, what is this?" "It's some information I came across recently," I said, "about our family history. About some things that I think deserve to be talked about openly." I looked at Simone. "Some things about your history." "Simone, Or should I say Sandra? The smile stayed on her face, but something shifted behind it, like a light being dialed down. I don't know what you mean, she said evenly. I think you do. I opened the folder and turned the first page toward Marcus. Your wife's legal name is Sandra Morrow. She grew up in Greensboro. She doesn't have a college degree, despite telling you she went to NC State. She's had 2 previous long-term relationships that she ended by disappearing completely. Both with men she was living with. Marcus stared at the paper. His voice was very quiet. What are you showing me? Keep reading, I said gently. He picked up the investigator's report. I watched his face as he read it. The confusion, the furrowing of his brow. The moment his expression changed, when he reached the section about the timeline. About the pregnancy. About the DNA test. This can't be. He looked up at Simone. What is this? What does this mean? Simone was very still now. The apron was still tied around her waist. She looked domestic and ordinary and like someone capable of dismantling a family with the patience of someone rearranging furniture. Your mother has clearly put a lot of effort into trying to cause problems, she said. Her voice was calm, controlled. Marcus, you know how she's been lately. She's been struggling with feeling left out. And I think this is Sandra. I said it quietly, not harshly. He's reading the DNA results right now. Marcus set the paper down. He pressed both hands flat on the table as if he needed to feel something solid. Jackson, he said. It wasn't a question. It was just the name of his son, spoken into a silence that suddenly held a different weight. There's a man named Terrence Webb, I said. He's been looking for you, Jackson, for almost 8 years. He didn't know you existed until 6 months ago. He came to me because he wanted to do this right, because he didn't want to walk up to an 8-year-old and blow up his world without a plan. I looked at Marcus carefully. He's a good man. He wants what's best for Jackson. And he knows you're the father Jackson has always known. And he respects that. Is this true? Marcus asked. He was looking at Simone. Is any of this true? She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Marcus, everything I've built for this family. Is it true? Another silence. In the playroom, we could hear Jackson narrating something to Lily. His voice animated and happy, unaware that the adults in the kitchen were sitting in the ruins of something that had been built on a lie. I did what I had to do, Simone said finally. Her voice had changed. The warmth was gone. What was left was something harder. More tired. I was alone and I was pregnant and I needed something stable. You were stable. You were kind. I made choices. You used my son, I said. I gave your son a family. You gave him a performance. I was surprised by how steady my own voice was. And you spent the last 7 years trying to make sure I couldn't see through it. All those missed birthdays, Simone. All those school events I was told the wrong time for. All the ways you told Marcus I was struggling. I was confused. I was becoming a concern. I paused. You couldn't erase me completely. So you made me irrelevant. She didn't deny it. That was almost the hardest thing. Watching her sit there without the energy left to deny it. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I want you to leave. Marcus. I'm not asking. His voice broke on the last word. But only just. I need you to go. Tonight. I need to think. And I need to be here with the kids. And I need you not to be in this house right now. She left. She took her car and her purse and whatever she could fit in 2 bags. And she drove away from that house in Cary on a Wednesday evening while Jackson and Lily watched something on television in the next room. Not knowing that the shape of their lives was changing. I stayed. I helped Marcus get the children to bed, inventing a reason why Mommy had needed to run an errand. I sat with him at the kitchen table until midnight while he worked through it in the halting, nonlinear way that grief operates, anger. Then numbness. Then an unexpected memory that started him crying. Then anger again. I don't understand how I didn't see it, he said more than once. She was very careful, I told him, and you're not the kind of person who looks for deception in someone you love. That's not a flaw, Marcus, that's just who you are. She was erasing you, he said at one point, staring at the table. All those times things got mixed up. All those missed things. She was doing that on purpose. Yes. And I just accepted it. I just let it happen. She was your wife. You trusted her. He looked up at me. You never stopped showing up. You're my son, I said. There is no version of this where I stop showing up. That was 6 months ago. I won't pretend the months that followed were easy. They weren't. Simone, Sandra, retained a lawyer and initially contested custody. But when faced with the documentation of her real identity, her history, and the financial irregularities Terence's investigator had found, she ultimately agreed to a shared arrangement that gave Marcus primary custody and allowed for Terence to begin building a relationship with Jackson. That part, bringing Terence into Jackson's life, was handled with enormous care. A family therapist named Dr. Okafor guided the process, meeting first with Jackson alone, then with Marcus, then gradually introducing Terence as someone important who Jackson hadn't known about yet. Jackson, being 8 and resilient and curious, handled it with more grace than most adults would have. He had questions. He had feelings about it. He went through a period of being angry and then a period of being inexplicably clingy with Marcus, needing constant reassurance that Marcus was still his dad. You're my dad, Marcus told him more than once. That doesn't change. It doesn't matter what a test says. I've been your dad since you were born and I'll be your dad until I'm old and embarrassing. Jackson had thought about that for a moment. How old? He'd asked. So old, Marcus said. Embarrassingly old. I'm going to show up to your graduation and hug you in front of everyone. Dad, no. And just like that, something that had been clenched in Marcus's face for weeks finally loosened. Terence was patient in a way I found remarkable. Given what he'd missed, he let Jackson set the pace. He showed up consistently for the small things, soccer practice pickups, birthday parties, the science fair where Jackson's volcano erupted about 4 inches further than planned and sprayed baking soda across 2 neighboring projects. He didn't try to be a parent right away. He just tried to be present. By month 4, Jackson was calling him Terry. Simone had moved to Charlotte. The children saw her on alternating weekends, supervised at first and then gradually less so. As Dr. Okafor assessed the situation, she was different with the children than she'd been with the adults in her life, genuinely affectionate with them. I think, in whatever way she was capable of. I chose to believe that was real. It made it easier. Lily, who was too young to understand most of what had happened, simply adjusted the way small children do, accepting the new shape of things with the kind of matter-of-fact adaptability that adults spend years in therapy trying to recover. And me. I want to tell you about a Saturday 3 months after everything came apart. Because it's the moment I keep coming back to when I think about what all of this was really for. Marcus had come over for the afternoon with the kids. Terence had stopped by to drop off a birthday gift for Lily. Her birthday was the following week. And he'd ended up staying for lunch, which turned into staying for most of the afternoon. The children were in the backyard. I could see them through the kitchen window. Jackson trying to teach Lily a handshake that was too complicated for her. Both of them dissolving into laughter every time she got it wrong. Marcus was at my kitchen table, drinking coffee and looking at his phone, relaxed in the way he rarely was during the marriage. Terence was leaning against the counter, asking me about the history of the house. Genuinely interested, the way he seemed to be genuinely interested in things. I was explaining about the back garden, how I'd planted it the summer Marcus turned 3. He used to help me, I said. He'd last about 10 minutes before deciding he'd rather play with the hose. Marcus looked up and grinned. That is completely accurate. You flooded the azalea bed twice. They survived. Terence laughed. It was a real laugh. Unguarded. And something about the sound of it. 3 people laughing in a kitchen on a Saturday afternoon. 2 children in a backyard. Ordinary and unperformed. Made something ease in my chest that I hadn't even known was still tightened. This was what Simone had been trying to dismantle. Not just the events she made me miss. Not just the distance she'd manufactured between me and Marcus. This easy, imperfect, genuine togetherness that didn't need to be curated or controlled or protected from scrutiny. She'd spent years afraid of what a watchful mother might eventually see. And she'd been right to be afraid. But she'd also been wrong about the outcome. Wrong about what seeing the truth would do to this family. I called Diane that evening, after Marcus and the children had gone home. It was a conversation we'd been circling around for months. Ever since she realized the cruise had been planned around my birthday and started putting together how many times she'd been fed wrong information about me. That I'd rescheduled things. That I'd said I was too busy. That I'd mentioned I needed more space. I should have questioned it more. She said, she was so convincing. Carol, I feel like an idiot. She was a professional. I said, she'd done this before. That doesn't make me feel less like an idiot. No, I agreed. It doesn't, but you're here now. We talked for almost 2 hours that night. Not about Simone. Mostly, just about everything else. All the years of our lives. All the things we hadn't said because we'd drifted and then gotten busy and then let the drift become a habit. When we finally said goodnight, she told me she loved me. And I told her I loved her. And neither of us said it in the hollow, reflex way that words like that can become. We meant it. That, too, was something Simone's attempt to erase me had inadvertently given back. My birthday this year was nothing like last year. Marcus asked me in July what I wanted to do, so we'd have enough time to plan properly. I told him I wanted exactly what I'd wanted last September, a family dinner. The people I loved most. A good meal, nothing complicated. September 14th fell on a Sunday. Marcus and the children arrived at noon to help me cook. Terrence came at 2 with Diane and Gerald, who'd all started an unlikely friendship over the past few months united. I suspected, partly by guilt and partly by genuine affection. My neighbor Pat brought wine. My cousin Ellen drove up from Wilmington. We cooked all afternoon, the kitchen full of people and noise and the occasional crisis. Jackson knocked a bowl of flour off the counter. Lily decided the best place to be was directly underfoot at all times. Marcus burned the first batch of rolls and had to start over while everyone teased him about it. I set the table for 11. Wrote the place cards in my careful, loopy handwriting. Lit the candles. When we all sat down, Marcus tapped his glass and said he wanted to say something. He stood up and looked around the table and I watched him take in the faces of the people sitting there, his children. His sister-in-law, a man who was becoming part of his family in a way that defied the usual categories. His mother at the head of the table. Last year we weren't here. He said, I wasn't here, and that's on me, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Mom, I'm sorry, you deserved better than what you got last year. He paused, but I also want to say thank you. Because you didn't disappear when it would have been easier to. You kept showing up, and I think you kind of saved us. I looked around the table. At Jackson, who was being careful with his fork because we'd told him the good dishes were special. At Lily, who had a small smear of something on her cheek that nobody had noticed yet. At Terrence, who'd driven 2 hours to be here. At Diane, who was trying not to cry. Families are supposed to save each other. I said, that's the whole point. We ate for 2 hours. We laughed more than we talked. We argued mildly about whether the rolls Marcus made were better than mine. They were not. And everyone knew it, but Marcus argued his case enthusiastically and Lily sided with him out of loyalty. Which made me love her fiercely. We lit 66 candles on my mother's chocolate cake and Jackson counted every single one and declared it a lot. Which was both true and charming. After the children fell asleep on my living room couch in that sudden, complete way children collapse, the adults sat around the dining room table with leftover cake and the last of the wine. And nobody mentioned Simone, and nobody talked about the year before. We just talked. Sometime around 11. When people were starting to say goodnight and gather jackets, Terrence pulled me aside in the kitchen. I just want you to know, he said, that when I knocked on your door that Thursday morning, I wasn't sure what I was going to find. I thought maybe you'd be, I don't know, suspicious, closed off. You had no reason to believe a stranger. You drove to my house because you were trying to protect a child. I said, that's not the behavior of someone to be suspicious of. Well, he glanced toward the living room where Jackson was sleeping. Thank you for listening. Thank you for finding me, I said. I stood on my porch and waved as the cars pulled away. One by one, Into the September night. The street was quiet and tree dark and smelled of the end of summer. My house behind me was warm and full of the evidence of people, dishes drying in the rack. A child's drawing left on the coffee table. A forgotten jacket draped over the stair railing. I thought about the woman who'd spent years trying to make me invisible. Who'd decided that the safest way to protect her lies was to ensure I had no meaningful place in the story. Here's what she miscalculated. She thought invisibility was something you could impose on a person. She thought if she left me out of enough photos, missed enough of my calls, told enough small stories about me being confused or difficult or unwell, I would eventually start to believe it myself. Start to shrink. Start to disappear. But I'd raised a son alone for 20 years. I'd kept a family held together with determination and 2 jobs and a front porch light that never went off. I'd planted a garden and tended it and watched things grow that had no reason to grow in difficult soil except that I kept showing up. You don't erase a woman like that with a few missed birthday dinners. You don't erase her at all. I turned off the porch light. Everyone was home. Everyone was safe, and went inside to what was mine.